Hello to all of you first-time cruisers out there. My name is Ken, and I'm an expert on absolutely nothing. But I have been on a lot of cruises, so I probably know a whole lot more about cruising than you do. So listen up and learn a few things that you probably should know before you go on your first cruise. So here I go. Now, I've been watching all of the YouTube videos on cruise tips that are put on by all of the self-proclaimed cruise experts. And for the most part, I do agree with just about everything that they recommend for the first-time cruisers. And if you think you can stay awake while you're watching them, then I recommend that you watch them too, because they are chock-a-block full of good information for first-time cruisers. So I'm not going to waste any of your time by going back and hashing over everything that's already been said. I just want to mention a few important things that I think you would like to know. So please, hear me now and believe me later. Okay, so before I get too deep into the ocean here and talk about your first cruise, I'm going to mention a few things that you may have been wondering about, or maybe even been worrying about. So let me put your mind at ease. Now, you're probably wondering if you're going to get seasick or not when you get on that ship. So I'm going to answer that question by saying this. You're probably more likely to get motion sickness on the airplane on your way to the ship than you are on that cruise ship, because these new modern cruise ships are so smooth and so well stabilized, it's very rare for anybody to ever get motion sickness while on a cruise ship. So there you go. Don't even worry about it, because most of the time you won't even realize that the ship is moving. But if you're still worried about it, then keep in mind that you can purchase over-the-counter pills that are just for motion sickness. Or you can purchase some special wristbands that are called acupressure C-bands, and they will supposedly prevent or cure any motion sickness. So if you by chance think you're feeling a little wheezy while you're on your cruise, keep in mind they do sell these products at the gift shop on your cruise ship. So just whip out that cruise card and get them. And besides you being worried about getting seasick, you might also be worried about just getting sick. And my answer to that is yes, you could get sick. And just for your own information, so you will know, the most common virus on a cruise ship is called a neurovirus. And it's highly contagious, but the outbreak of the neurovirus is rare on a modern cruise ship. But please, don't let being worried about it ruin your dream cruise. Just practice good hygiene, just like you were taught when you were a child. You know, wash your hands often, and don't touch your lips with your fingers, and don't pick at your nose or rub your eyes, because these are some of the best ways for a virus to find its way into your body. So just practice good hygiene and good sanitation, and don't worry about it, and you'll be just fine. I personally like to stay off of the elevators, because every person on that ship has had their nasty fingers on those buttons. So I recommend to push those elevator buttons with something besides your finger, like maybe a pencil or a bobby pin or something like that. Or take the stairways, which is located right next to the elevators. And as long as you don't touch the handrails, the stairways are generally germ-free. And it's good exercise. The cruise lines put big emphasis on sanitation, and they're constantly wiping down and cleaning everything. And there are hand sanitation stations everywhere. So use them. And I even carry a small bottle of liquid hand sanitizer in my pocket, and I often use it too. And as far as wearing a face mask, everybody has their own opinions about that. So I'm not even going to touch that subject. So you can go ahead and decide that one for yourself. Oh, and by the way, cruise ships do have a medical dispensary with a doctor and a nurse on staff, and you hope you never have to use their services. But just for peace of mind, it might be a good idea to go ahead and check with the cruise line to see if they would accept your health insurance or not. And if not, you might think about checking on getting some extra health insurance coverage and even some travel insurance coverage just to cover your dream cruise. Because if you were to get sick or miss your flight or miss your ship for whatever reason, you sure don't want to lose all that money that you paid. So if you can afford the extra expense for that kind of insurance coverage, it may be well worth it just for the peace of mind that it will give you. So I recommend that you give that some serious thought. The third thing that you may or may not be worried about is the ship going to sink and are you going to drown? Well, if you're really worried about that, then you've probably been watching the movie Titanic too many times. But yes, that could happen, but the chances of that happening are extremely rare. But just in case there really is a real emergency, I'm going to say this. Before the cruise ship is allowed to sail away on day one, all passengers are required to meet up at their assigned muster stations where they will show you how to put on a life vest. Oh, and by the way, your life vest will be located in your stateroom with you. But now don't forget, you'll still have to furnish your own shark repellent. And don't worry about being left behind in case of a real emergency, because all cruise ships are required by law to have plenty of lifeboats for everybody. And the lifeboats on a cruise ship are not just rowboats with an oar for everybody. Those lifeboats are very modern and very nice, and they have their own propulsion and navigation systems. And I'm going to say this too, in case of a real emergency, take the stairway down to your muster station and do not get on an elevator, because the elevators are powered by electricity, and if the cruise ship is sinking, then its electrical power will be lost, and you don't want to be stuck on an elevator on a sinking ship. And the next thing that I'm going to recommend that you should have with you at all times, and that's a very small AA battery flashlight that will fit comfortably in your pocket. Because I'm going to tell you what, it's very rare, but on occasion ships have been known to lose their electrical power. And if that happens, it's going to be really dark on that ship. And who knows, the flashlight on your iPhone may not last very long. But now please, don't let all of this stuff scare you, because the odds are your dream cruise is going to go just fine. And you should take lots of photos and put the prints in something tangible, like a photo album, so you can always look back years later and remember what a good time you had on your dream cruise. But now if you're still a little worried about your first cruise and you still have some cold feet, then let me make this recommendation. There are many cruises that are shorter than the standard 7-day and 14-day cruises, because most cruise lines do offer 5-day and 3-day cruises. So you might think about trying one of those, just to get your feet wet, pardon the pun, and see how you're going to like it. Okay, so now I'm just going to briefly mention something about the mobile phone. Please, you're on your dream cruise. Do you really need that mobile phone? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, and you better listen up. If you really need to stay in touch with the outside world, then please go ahead and pay the extra money and use the ship's internet connection. It's slower than molasses in wintertime, but it's at least much less expensive than mobile phone roaming charges. And here's something else that you may have been wondering about: religious services. And yes, they do have religious services on the cruise ship, both Protestant and Catholic and others. Now here's something else that I know you have been wondering about for a long time, and that's what's the difference between a ship and a boat? Well, nobody really knows the answer to that, because nobody seems to know where the size of a boat ends and where the size of a ship begins. But an old Navy man once told me that it's real easy to figure out. He told me that a boat will fit on top of a ship, but a ship will never fit on top of a boat. So there you go. Now you know the difference between a ship and a boat. Okay, now here's something else that all first-time cruisers must be well aware of and strictly adhere to, because it's an unwritten rule and law that when you get on a ship, you must speak in ship jargon. You know, like when you meet somebody, you would say ahoy. Or if you're talking about the right side of the ship, then you must call it the starboard side. Or if you're talking about the left side of the ship, you want to refer to that as the port side. There are many more terms too that you will be getting familiar with. But please, if you want to avoid a big fine, then don't let a seven seas policeman catch you talking and not using old salty sailor language and jargon, minus the swearing, of course. But now seriously, go ahead and make it a point and learn some of the maritime terms that are used aboard a ship. So just enjoy it and have a good time on your dream cruise and take those photos. So now let's talk about your first cruise. And the very first thing that I want you to remember is this. Your first cruise doesn't start when you get on that ship. Your first cruise should start about 6 months before you get on that ship, because there is no substitute for good preparation. And good preparation starts with a very good checklist, because if you don't have a good checklist, then you will go off and forget something, and you don't want to do that. Some people like to use their iPhone for their checklist, but I like to use a small, inexpensive digital pocket recorder for my checklist. And every time I think of something, I push the small recorder button and say what it is. You know, things like passport, medications, credit cards, stop the mail, bathing suit, umbrella, tell Aunt Tilly I'm leaving town, and many other important things like that. And oh, by the way, when you get on the ship, you're going to be meeting other people and probably making some new friends who you will be wanting to stay in touch with long after the cruise is over. And that same small digital pocket recorder that you've been using for a checklist will come in very handy for remembering names, telephone numbers, and email addresses. And another part of a good preparation is deciding which cruise line is the best fit for you. And that's going to require some studying, because there are many different cruise lines and they all have their own policies and their own rules. For instance, some cruise lines do not allow clothes irons or curling irons aboard their ships because they consider it a fire hazard. And some cruise lines allow their passengers to bring aboard their own soft drinks and their own liquor, while some of the other cruise lines do not allow that. Some cruise lines have very large ships, while other cruise lines have the smaller ships. Some cruise lines are more young family and children oriented, with many young children running all over the ship at Mach 2 speed and with their hair on fire, while other cruise lines cater more to people who are older and retired, and where the white hair, the no hair, and the wheelchairs all move at a much slower pace. And during your preparation period before the cruise, you will also need to be making some other important decisions, like which excursions, if any, do you want to take, and things like do you really want that beverage package or not that the cruise line offers. So, as you can see, there are a myriad of decisions for you to make long before you get out that credit card or that checkbook. Now, you've probably heard this before, but a cruise ship that carries anywhere from 4,000 to 5,000 people is kind of like a floating city. And just like any other small city, a cruise ship also has its own police department and its own fire department, and all of those other departments too that any small city will have. And believe it or not, a cruise ship even has a small morgue. And a cruise ship even has its own desalination plant that converts seawater into clean fresh water that you will be taking a shower in or drinking. And believe it or not, it's very good drinking water and it tastes good. But if you're still not convinced, they do sell bottled water on the ship. You know, I never recommend any particular tours to anybody, because everybody has their own likes and dislikes. But I'm going to recommend this one to all first-time cruisers because I believe that you will really like it. So remember this, it's called the Behind the Scenes Tour. And what it is a special tour of the ship in the areas where the passengers never get to see. Places like the engine room and the laundry room and the main kitchen and many other places that the passengers normally never get to see. The Behind the Scenes Tour is a small group of passengers who get to see for themselves just how a cruise ship operates. And it will broaden your scope of knowledge about cruise ships, and I think you will really enjoy it. And now I'm going to say something about the cruise consultant. You know, that very nice person who you've been talking to on the phone and who's been answering all of your important questions and who's been going that second mile just to help you get your cruise all set up and ready to go. Well, that's all fine and dandy, and most all cruise consultants are very nice people. But you know what? So are used car salesmen. They're really nice people too. And just like a used car salesman, a cruise consultant also works on a commission and or a quota. And believe it or not, there are many cruise consultants who have never actually been on a cruise, but you would never know it by just talking to them on the telephone. So before you commit your entire savings account for your dream cruise, then you be sure and read the fine print. Because once you get on that ship, you may be finding out that some things are quite different than what you were told by your cruise consultant. So you be sure and read the entire agreement, and especially the fine print. And always remember this, cruise lines exist for one reason and one reason only, and that's to make a profit. And the CEOs of those cruise lines, they exist for one reason and one reason only, and that's to maximize those profits. And here's just one example. Gratuity is just a fancy word for tipping. And many years ago, the gratuity or the tipping was optional. But nowadays, many cruise lines consider gratuity to be mandatory. And it's not cheap either. So when you're sitting around with your little calculator and you're figuring out how much your dream cruise is going to cost you, then take that gratuity thing into consideration and get that squared away with that cruise line. So be sure and read that fine print, because it's just like I've already said, and it's worth repeating. What your cruise consultant previously told you and what you will experience on the cruise ship may be two different things. Now here's a good hint for you. The staterooms on a cruise ship are very small. So if you're claustrophobic, then do not book an inside stateroom with no window. So there you go. That's another good reason why your cruise should start several months before you get on the ship. Because if you wait too long to book your cruise, then all of the good rooms with windows and balconies might already be taken. Oh, and by the way, when you get on a ship, they're not called just rooms, they're called staterooms. And don't worry about your stateroom being located on deck 13. Because of superstitions, there is no deck 13 on a cruise ship. And speaking of your stateroom, I'm going to mention something else here that you may have been wondering about. Even though the staterooms are very small, the showers are big, and they put out more than plenty of good, clean, fresh water, and I think you're going to love it. And speaking of that stateroom, when you're booking your cruise, you might think about trying to get a stateroom that's located at midship along about deck 4 or deck 5, because that will put you at an equal distance between the main restaurant, which is located on the back of the ship, and the main theater, which is located at the front of the ship. And trust me, you're going to be spending a lot of time at both of those locations. And just for your own information, and so you will know, one of the other advantages of having your stateroom at midship is that is the one location on a cruise ship that is least affected by any motion of the ocean. So there you go. Okay, so I've talked about the checklist, and I've talked about your cruise consultant. So now I'm going to talk about your luggage and the stuff that you're going to take with you on your cruise. And before I go any further, I'm going to say this about your luggage. For one, you should write your name and your telephone number in big bold letters on a piece of paper and put it inside your luggage. And for two, you should mark the outside of your luggage with something that's very obvious and can be spotted 40 feet away, and something that's different from everybody else's luggage. Because I'm going to tell you what, you just haven't lived yet until you have to go through 5,000 pieces of luggage looking for your luggage, and they all look just alike. So be sure and mark the outside of your luggage with something that's different and easy to spot from 40 feet away, like maybe a bright colored tag that you've attached to the handle on your luggage. You know, something that's very conspicuous and easy to spot. So if you're like most people who cruise, you'll have a partner with you, either a friend or a spouse. And you know, the airlines do, every now and then, lose people's luggage. So what you want to do is put half of your stuff in your partner's luggage and half of their stuff in your luggage, just in case the airline was to lose one of them. And you want to get to your cruise ship at least 1 to 2 days early, just in case the airline was to lose one of your luggage. And it'll give them a day or two to find it for you. And it will give you a day or two to go shopping, so you can replace whatever it is that the airline's lost. And getting to your ship a day or two early allows you enough time to explore that city's points of interest and to readjust yourself from that terrible jet lag. Oh, and by the way, when it comes to the cash money, you should carry half of the cash, and your traveling partner should carry the other half of the cash. And you should each carry a valid credit card. You won't need any cash on the cruise ship because on day one, when you process in, you will be issued a cruise card that you will use to get in and out of your stateroom, and you'll be using that same cruise card to make any additional purchases while you're on the ship. And then at the end of the cruise, they will total it all up for you and let you know how much they're going to charge your credit card. And then at that point, after you've seen your total bill and you've gone into hypershock and passed out, then your partner can call 911 for you. Because I'm telling you, cruises are not cheap and they're not for poor folks. And now I'm going to tell you something here that all of those self-appointed cruise experts forgot to mention. So listen up. Let's say you have found an advertisement for a 7-day dream cruise and it fits your budget for only $1,000. Well, whoa, right there, partner, and hold your horses before you go to inviting all of your friends to go with you, because that $1,000 is per person and not just for the room. And remember what I said earlier, cruise lines exist for one reason only, and that's to make a profit. And they have all kinds of sneaky ways to get their fingers into your purse or your wallet. So by the time you figure in gratuity and excursions and specialty restaurants and other purchases, then you can figure in another 25 to 50% on top of that $1,000 per person. And that's just the reality of it all. So don't forget that. The two things that I highly recommend when traveling is a travel vest and a money belt, because a travel vest has many pockets and you don't want to put anything in your luggage that you can't live without. You know, things like your medications that you have to take to stay alive, and your passport, because you'll be needing that just to get on the ship or when you visit another country. So anything that you just cannot afford to lose, jewelry, money, credit cards, passport, medications, whatever it is, you keep all of those items on yourself in your travel vest or in your money belt. And speaking of the money belt, do not get a money belt made of nylon or cotton, because they will make you sweat and they will make you itch. The money belt that you want is a silk money belt, because they are very comfortable and you won't even know that you have it on. And as you probably already know, tourists are targets for the thieves, and the pickpockets all hang around the ship portacals by the hundreds. So always be alert from the moment that you walk off of the ship. So ladies, leave your purse in that safe back there in your stateroom, because it will be just fine, and don't even worry about it. And wear that silk money belt under your blouse, and you will be just fine too. And gentlemen, keep your wallet in one of your front pockets, because pickpockets, they don't like that. But now seriously, listen up here. It's really okay if you want to take a purse or a shoulder bag off of the ship with you and into a foreign country. But please, just make sure that there's nothing in it except maybe used Kleenex and empty candy wrappers. And now I'm going to talk some about the ship excursions. Those are the guided tours that you take off of the ship. The excursions that are offered by the cruise line have their advantages and they have their disadvantages. And two of their advantages are, one, there is safety in numbers. And second, the cruise line is totally responsible for getting you back to the ship in time before the ship sails away. Because cruise ships operate on a strict schedule and they're not going to wait on anybody. So I recommend to always be back to the cruise ship at least 2 hours before it sails away, and you will be just fine. Okay, so now the disadvantage to taking an excursion off of the ship is I believe they are too expensive for what you get, because to me it seemed like they spend less time at the points of interest that you paid to see and too much time at their on-shore gift shop, and I don't like that. So here's a good tip for you. If you're going ashore at a country or a territory that you can trust, there are very often some very good tours that are available and at a very reasonable price. Just make sure that you can always get back to the ship on time. In other words, don't take any of those tours that go outside of the city, because if necessary, for any reason, you always want to be able to catch a taxi back to your ship in plenty of time before it sails away. Another option to think about that some people like to do, but only in a city and country that you can trust, and that's to split the cost with another couple and take a taxi that has an English-speaking driver who can drive you around for an hour and show you the points of interest that that city has to offer. But remember, you would only want to do that kind of a taxi tour in a country and city that you can trust. So if your port of call is in a third world country or a city that you don't have a good feeling about, then stay with the ship's excursion tours. And whatever you do, don't wander away from your tour group, and you will be just fine. And now I'm going to say just one more thing about excursions, and it's very important for you to remember. And these things should have been talked about in your excursion briefing. But when you walk off of that ship into another country, don't you forget, they are not the foreigners, you are. So you need to respect their laws, their rules, and their traditions. The only time that you will ever need any cash during a cruise is when you walk off of the ship at the various portacals in the various countries and territories that you will be visiting. But don't you worry none, because they all accept United States currency. Oh yes, and it's true. President George Washington is still alive and well and living on a U.S. $1 bill. And now I'm going to say something about the gift shops. When you go ashore in some of these countries, you'll see a gift shop with a big sign that reads, "Duty Free." Well, before you rush in there and buy out the store, just keep in mind that it may be duty free in some countries, but just not in your country. So you might want to check that out with the information desk on the ship before you go ashore. And keep in mind too, that sometimes the gift shop on the ship will have a big clearance sale on the last day of the cruise. And as I am getting close to the end of this video, I want to say this. to all of you new travelers out there. My wife and I have traveled into all 50 states together, and we've been to 42 other countries, and we've been on 13 cruises. And anytime anybody asks us which one was our favorite, we always give the same answer, all of them. Because I'm telling you, there is a world of very interesting things out there for you to explore and enjoy. So please try to make the time and just get out there and do it. Because you should always remember that we're supposed to go to work so we can live. We're not supposed to live just so we can go to work. Always be thankful to God for what you have, and always count your blessings and not your heartaches. Okay, so I think I've said just about everything that I wanted to say to first-time cruisers, and I've tried to talk about only those things that somehow the other cruise experts failed to mention in their videos. So anyway, I hope you have enjoyed my tips for first-time cruisers, and I sincerely hope that it's been very beneficial to you. And if it has, then please click on that thumbs up like button and send me a comment. Thank you very much, and happy cruising.